Sad breaking news to bring you that two-time Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, were found dead on Wednesday afternoon.
A real legend has passed away in Hollywood. At 95, Gene Hackman, a formidable performer whose on-screen persona was nothing short of captivating, passed away. His work spanned decades and left a lasting impression on film. From the grim resolve of the French Connection to the merciless appeal of Lex Luthor in Superman, his admirers recognized him as a skilled performer who could control any situation with a single look. However, concerning information regarding his death has emerged as tributes flood in, information that begs more questions than it answers. When police arrived at his Santa Fe residence, they found a situation that was far from typical. There were no obvious traces of forced entry or apparent cause of death when his wife, Betsy, and their dog were discovered dead under strange circumstances. Is there more to this story, or was this an unfortunate accident? We reflect on Hackman's remarkable career and the enigmatic circumstances surrounding his last moments tonight. The brightness and glamour of the silver screen were far from where Gene Hackman's path to Hollywood glory started. His early years were characterized by an unrelenting desire to forge his own path. He was born in 1930 in San Bernardino, California, and grew up in Illinois. He joined the Marine Corps when he was barely 16 years old, which helped him develop the perseverance and discipline that would eventually characterize his acting career. Following his service, he discovered that he was drawn to telling stories and enrolled in the Pasadena Playhouse to practice. However, it wasn't an easy journey. He endured years of hardship, accepting menial jobs, eking out a living, and being rejected all the time. Many questioned his abilities, writing him off as too commonplace or unusual. Hackman's resolve, however, remained unwavering. Then came the pivotal event of Bonnie and Clyde in 1967. His portrayal of Buck Barrow, which attracted Hollywood's notice, was the ideal mix of charm and erratic behavior. The industry suddenly took notice. After he achieved the breakthrough he had been battling for, Gene Hackman became a formidable figure. His standing among Hollywood's elite was solidified in the 1970s. When Hackman played Detective Popeye Doyle in the 1971 film The French Connection, it was a hit. It won him his first Academy Award for Best Actor and was gritty, intense, and completely captivating. Hackman had made it, but he refused to fit into a mold. A few years later, in Francis Ford Coppola's subdued intellectual thriller The Conversation, 1974, he once again astounded moviegoers. Hackman delivered one of his most eerie performances as a surveillance specialist, sinking in dread. Then came Superman in 1978, when he brought a razor-sharp wit and a frightening charm to the part of Lex Luthor, radically redefining the comic book villain. He controlled the screen like few performers ever could, whether he was portraying a devious mastermind, a wounded recluse, or a tough detective. His versatility was demonstrated in the 1980s and 1990s. He was able to move fluidly between emotionally charged, complicated personalities and stern, no-nonsense authority types. He transformed what should have been a straightforward sports movie into a profoundly poignant one. In 1986, Whose Ears, playing a struggling basketball coach attempting to turn his life around. He then addressed one of the most troubling periods in American history in Mississippi Burning, 1988, giving a powerful performance that left audiences in awe. Hackman kept demonstrating why he was among the best actors of his era as the 1990s approached. Clint Eastwood played the vicious Sheriff Little Bill Daggett in Unforgiven, 1992, one of his most terrifying roles. He earned his second Academy Award, this time for Best Supporting Actor, for a performance that was so unvarnished and multi-layered. Shortly thereafter, he collaborated with Denzel Washington on Crimson Tide, 1995, establishing a tense on-screen rivalry. He then played a former intelligence officer opposite Will Smith in Enemy of the State, 1998, combining action, suspense, and his trademark seriousness. Hackman had nothing more to prove by the early 2000s. Even legends know when to back off, yet he had performed for decades that the world would never forget. His portrayal as the eccentric and seriously flawed dad of a dysfunctional family in 2001 was a career high point for him and exemplified his ability to blend heartbreak and humor. Then in 2004, he made his last on-screen appearance in the light-hearted comedy Welcome to Mooseport, which was a suitable send-off for an actor who had done it all, even though it wasn't his best-reviewed film. Then he turned to leave. Hackman made a unique decision for a Hollywood star. He gave up acting altogether. He just departed without a goodbye tour or gentle fading. He lived a quiet life in New Mexico, avoiding the spotlight and concentrating on writing novels. He never looked back, despite fans' hopes for a final comeback. His legacy was already written, enshrined in the motion pictures that influenced audiences for centuries. An actor who could blend into any part and give every performance an unmatched level of authenticity, Gene Hackman was a force to be reckoned with for decades. He was more than simply a movie star. He was a legend, a craftsman, a storyteller, and his creations still inspire people today. However, his death has left us with disturbing doubts about how his last days transpired. In addition to the globe mourning an icon, the circumstances are perplexing, the specifics peculiar, and the mystery only grows as more details come to light. At first, the news of Gene Hackman's death seemed simple. An old Hollywood icon who had enjoyed a long, happy life had just died. However, as more information became available, the narrative took a sinister and unnerving turn. Gene was not the only one who had passed away. Inside their Santa Fe house, his wife Betsy and one of their dogs were also discovered dead. The story abruptly changed from a serene death to something far more enigmatic. There was a lot of speculation. Was this a medical emergency, a terrible accident, or something darker? When authorities got to the house, they discovered a haunting scene that left them with more questions than answers. Betsy Hackman was found resting close to the counter in the restroom. There were prescription tablets all over the floor, and a space heater had been knocked over next to her. Was she down? Had the heater struck her as she sought for something? It was not clear. Her body's decomposition, which indicated she had been there for a while before being found, was even more unsettling. In a different room, Gene was discovered completely dressed, his sunglasses resting next to him. There were no obvious wounds or signs of concern right away. However, his posture gave the impression that he had fallen abruptly. Did a medical emergency cause him to collapse? Did he attempt to contact his wife, but fail to arrive in time? After that, the German Shepherd dog was discovered dead in the bathroom closet, but two other dogs appeared to be unhurt and roamed the house. What had killed it? Was it something to do with whatever killed Gene and Betsy? Or had it fallen victim to something else entirely? Another disturbing detail was observed by investigators. They left the entrance door open. No windows were smashed, no locks were broken, and there were no indications of forced entry. The door was open, but why? Had someone come in or gone out? Theories started to circulate since there were so many strange factors involved. Carbon monoxide poisoning was one of the first things that was ruled out. Officials from the fire brigade tested the house thoroughly, but they found no evidence of a leak. What if not gas exposure? Was there a medical catastrophe involved? A catastrophic chain of events in which one person experienced an unexpected medical crisis and the other person fell apart as a result? Both Gene and his wife were becoming older, with Gene being 95 and his wife being 64. Could he have seen Betsy's accident and died of a heart attack or stroke in his panic? An unintentional overdose was another idea. Suspicions were aroused by the presence of strewn medications. Had Betsy overdosed on her drugs? Had the dog consumed a poisonous substance? Had Gene too unintentionally taken something? The results had not yet been made public, but toxicology reports had been ordered. Then came the most unsettling prospect. Was there any foul play? Some questioned whether someone else had been in the house because of the unlocked door, the odd placement of the bodies, and the dog's unexplained death. There had been no sign of a struggle. But would something more sinister have taken place? Was there a guest who went unnoticed? Even though investigators were careful, the public was left wondering. Despite the authorities' recognition, of the unusual character of the scene and their insistence that there were no overt indications of foul activity. How could such strange circumstances lead to the deaths of a beloved performer and his wife? Toxicology results might take weeks to come in, and official autopsy reports were still awaited. Meanwhile, the mystery only grew more complex. What actually took place in the house? Was this merely a sad mishap, a string of health setbacks, or did Gene Hackman's last minutes include an invisible hand? More questions than answers exist at the moment. One thing is certain, though, while we wait for the truth to be revealed, Hollywood has lost a legend, and the details of his last days are still unknown. Hollywood and beyond were rocked by the news of Gene Hackman's death. Actors, filmmakers, and moviegoers who had long appreciated his extraordinary talent, his commitment to his profession, and the enduring influence he had on film began to pay their respect. In his reflections on Hackman's genius, Francis Ford Coppola, who collaborated with him on The Conversation, described him as a performance with unparalleled depth and complexity and a true master of his craft. He could be fierce, he could be vulnerable, he was one of the greats, Viola Davis said, praising his capacity to bring unadulterated passion to every part. In a touching tribute, Antonio Banderas lamented the passing of a legend who influenced countless performers. According to George Takei, Hackman is a giant on screen who has the ability to change into anyone and convince you at every turn. Shaken by the news, Josh Brolin said, "I'm devastated. My favorites were always him. No one else will ever be like him." The tribute was not limited to actors and filmmakers. Social media was used by fans worldwide to show their appreciation for Hackman's work. He was one of the most admired actors of his era because of his ability to control the screen and completely immerse himself in a role. From his iconic role as Lex Luthor in Superman to his Oscar-winning performances in The French Connection and Unforgiven, he left behind a body of work that future generations will study and appreciate. Hackman's brilliance was not the only thing that set him apart. He made the conscious decision to leave Hollywood on his own terms. Hackman took the unusual choice to quit the business at the peak of his career, in contrast to many performers who find retirement difficult to accept. He never went back to acting, never made an unexpected appearance, and never sought attention again after Welcome to Mooseport in 2004. He chose to live a tranquil life, writing novels and enjoying his solitude in New Mexico in his final years. Fans have been hoping for a final part or performance that would bring him back to the big screen for years. However, Hackman was happy to let his art speak for itself because he had already given so much to the world. In a field that frequently requires perpetual innovation and unending exposure, his total exit from Hollywood was nearly unprecedented. Like his performances, that choice made him stand out. Hackman had no desire to be famous. Great stories were what he wanted to tell, and those tales still have resonance today, despite his disappearance. His impact is incalculable, and his performances are ageless. One thing is evident as the industry laments his passing. Actor Gene Hackman was more than that. He was a natural storyteller who could effortlessly and authentically bring any character to life. His impact extends beyond the movies he produced, to include the actors he influenced and the viewers he enthralled. Despite the sadness of his departure, his work guarantees that he will always be remembered. His performances, his commitment, and his influence will last forever, and the film industry will always be appreciative of it. His choice to leave Hollywood in 2004 was both unexpected and decisive for an actor as well known as Gene Hackman. He just stepped away at a time when studios were ready to cast him in new projects, and he was still in high demand. He was finished. There would be no farewell tour or big statement. Hackman also never looked back, in contrast to many actors who retire just to come back for a final movie. However, why? Acting had never been about celebrity for Hackman. It was about storytelling and the art, and he was ready for a change after decades of demanding tasks and unrelenting work. He shifted his attention to writing and poured all of his creative energy into novels rather than screenplays. Few Hollywood greats ever really managed to live a peaceful life like he did. Far from the lights and cameras that had trailed him for decades, he withdrew to Santa Fe, New Mexico. He was at calm in that wide open space. He conducted his life according to his own terms, without press junkets or red carpets. He wrote, rode his bike, and relished the small joys that Hollywood had never given him. People who knew him remarked that even though he was a recluse, he was nonetheless intelligent and involved in the world as he grew older. He continued to read, write, and reflect extensively on the world while he fought the inevitable effects of aging, but public appearances, those essentially vanished. Very seldom was he seen, and when he was, it was only briefly. A fan's fast photo, a fleeting glimpse at a nearby store. He had done something that few performers of his caliber ever do. He had totally disassociated himself from the field that had shaped his life. Hackman, however, had no desire to recreate his former glory or harbor longing for the spotlight. It was sufficient that he had performed to the best of his ability. Rumors concerning his health circulated in the years preceding his passing. Some thought he was weak. He was doing well according to others. In actuality, however, very few were aware. Hackman had created a life in which his seclusion was valued, which is uncommon for a person of his caliber, and his life is still as mysterious as ever after his death. He was a man who lived according to his own rules, vanished when he felt like it, and left a lasting legacy. Gene Hackman, an actor who gave his all on screen but concealed the rest of himself, is still a mystery even after his passing. Unsettling questions still surround Gene Hackman's passing. Some facts simply don't add up, even though the official reports indicate there was no foul play. Why were Hackman, his wife Betsy, and their dog discovered in different parts of the house? How did they all wind up in separate rooms if this was just an accident or a medical emergency? And the entrance door is open. There were no indications of a struggle or forced entrance. However, the door remained open. Did someone inside leave it open in a last-ditch effort to get assistance? Or had someone else been there and vanished into thin air? What about the schedule? Before they were found, authorities think the victims had been there for as long as 2 weeks. Why didn't anyone notice? No relatives, no neighbors? Are there no pals checking in? Even in retirement, a figure like Hackman would continue to attract attention. Why then did it take so long for someone to notice the problem? The answers might be in the toxicology results. Were drugs used? Did Betsy have a medical condition that caused her to collapse? Was it tension, shock, or something darker that caused Gene's death? Until such reports are made public, conjecture will persist. Nevertheless, Gene Hackman's legacy cannot be overwhelmed, even in light of the tragedy surrounding his last moments. He was one of the most talented actors of all time, giving each role he played a genuine sense of depth and passion. Hackman delivered us some of the most memorable performances in movie history, from Popeye Doyle's unwavering resolve in The French Connection to Sheriff Little Bill's subdued menace in Unforgiven. Who could overlook his role as Lex Luthor in Superman, of course? In Hackman's hands, a figure who may have been over the top became both endearing and terrifying. He had an unrivaled reign. He might be a villain, a hero, a man battling his own demon, or a regular person attempting to understand the world. He made it his own, whatever the job. Even after leaving Hollywood, his influence remained constant. New generations of actors, filmmakers, and moviegoers are still motivated by his films. His life's work is also very apparent, even though his last chapter is full with mystery. As we bid farewell to one of the greats, let's remember all that he offered us, rather than just how he departed us. Rewatch The French Connection. Review the discussion. See Unforgiven through new eyes. Through his performances, he continues to live on. Gene Hackman, may you rest in peace. You were genuinely